On August 4th, 1981, 34-year-old Sylvia Quayle from Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, did not show up for coffee with her parents in the morning as per their regular custom. Concerned, her father went to check on her, only to discover Sylvia's lifeless body lying in a pool of her own blood at her residence. Who could have committed such a heinous crime? Did Sylvia know her killer, or was it a random attack? Welcome back to Mysterious 7, where we shed light on under-the-radar and high-profile cases across the globe. Today we'll be looking at a cold case that was solved after 40 years. But first, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Let's dive into this mystery without any further ado. Located in the Arapahoe County of Colorado, Cherry Hills Village is a beautiful and affluent suburb known for its stunning natural landscapes, luxurious homes, and high-end shopping and dining options. Originally settled by the Arapahoe tribe, Cherry Hills Village is named after a grove of cherry trees near the original town site. This tight-knit community has a population of just over 6,000 residents. Be it a nature lover or a shopping enthusiast, this place has something to offer for everyone. But as every good thing has a bad side to it, this vibrant community has also been a witness to a horrific crime that took place in 1981. Born on September 23, 1946, Sylvia May Quayle was the eldest daughter of the married couple William and Mary Quayle. Sylvia also had a younger sister, Jo, whom she loved with all her heart. Sylvia was known for her vivacious and friendly nature in her community. In addition to her infectious laugh that was enough to light up a room, Sylvia was admired for her kindness. She was always ready to lend a hand to anyone without a second thought. Professionally, she was a quite ambitious and focused individual. Her positivity was not limited to her socialization either. She was a very ambitious individual and worked hard to achieve it. Due to her keen interest in history and architecture, Sylvia began working as an assistant in an architectural firm after graduating from Englewood High School. Not just in her work, Sylvia had a golden opportunity to delve into her passion at home too, since her uncle Wesley Quayle was one of the most notable architects of the area. Sylvia loved going through her Uncle Wellesley's projects. She'd sometimes spend hours studying her uncle's various blueprints, which was quite unusual for a woman of that time. Sylvia's friends and family also admired this remarkable woman for her plethora of creative hobbies. One such hobby was pottery. Her pottery was quite a popular souvenir among her known circle. But out of all these hobbies, she was most serious about cooking. In fact, at one point, Sylvia decided to take it on as a part-time career. She even started her own wedding cake business called The Buttery. Despite being so independent and well put together, Sylvia maintained a close bond with her parents and her sister. The 3800 block of South Ogden Street, Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, where Sylvia lived alone, was barely 150 feet away from her parents' house. Though Sylvia's parents didn't intervene in her life, they liked the fact that they were so close to her. Though Sylvia was quite busy with her work, having morning coffee at her parents' place was included in Sylvia's daily routine. After spending some quality time together, the family went on for the day. August 3, 1981 was just like another day for the Quayle family. After having their regular morning coffee together, Sylvia left for her work. As usual, she promised to visit the next morning for coffee. Her parents never anticipated that it was the last time they were seeing their daughter. Around 11 p.m. that night, Sylvia had spoken to her sister on the phone. While the two sisters chatted, everything seemed normal. Sadly, this would be the last conversation the two would ever have. The very next day, on August 4, 1981, Sylvia did not show up at her parents' house for her usual morning coffee. It was really unusual for her, since she never skipped her morning routine before without informing anyone. Her parents knew that she wouldn't skip her morning coffee without informing them. Concerned for her well-being, they called on her landline but could not reach her. Sylvia's father, William, wasted no time in rushing to Sylvia's house, sensing that there was something wrong. Sylvia's home was barely 150 feet away from his house, so he reached there in almost no time. When he arrived, He instantly noticed that both the security screen door and the front door to the residence were wide open, and the house was unusually silent. As he entered the house, William witnessed something that no father should ever have to. Sylvia's lifeless naked body was lying on her back in a pool of her own blood on the living room floor. Her arms were up over her head, still entangled in her long-sleeved red shirt, and her legs were spread apart. Her face was covered with a white towel. Horrified, William called 911 for help. When officers from the Cherry Hills Village Police Department arrived at the crime scene, the distraught father moved the white towel covering her face and covered her exposed crotch area in an attempt to provide some dignity to his deceased daughter. Officers placed it back to its original position before moving forward with their crime scene examination. There were traces of blood everywhere. A significant amount of blood on her pillow and bed inside the bedroom indicated that the attack started from the bedroom and ended in the living room. Sylvia's body was covered with bruises and cuts. She had apparent red marks on her neck, knees, and both elbows. The marks on her neck were consistent with the shape of the fingers. Her fingernails were also damaged and broken, indicating Sylvia's very last attempt for survival. Detectives found a kitchen knife on the floor near the body. The knife had apparent blood traces on it. The handle was covered in a white shirt. The living room telephone cord connected to the phone from the wall was intentionally cut. It was theorized that the attack was planned and the killer eliminated all the possibilities of seeking help prior to her killing. Sylvia's 1974 Chevrolet Corvette was parked in front of the garage. The telephone line that was supposed to run to the house was lying across the hood of the vehicle. It appeared to have been pulled away from the insulator that was mounted to the south side of the house by a garden hose. Detectives also discovered that the screen of the exterior bathroom window on the east side of the residence had its screen removed. Although the window was closed, it was unlocked. There was also a small pry mark on the bottom of the wooden window frame. It was believed to be the possible entry point of the killer into the house. The window screen was found 75 feet from the house in tall weeds. The detectives collected a total of 140 pieces of evidence from the crime scene, including the semen found on the orange rug in the living room floor. The body was then sent to the Arapahoe County Coroner's Office for an autopsy. The autopsy result revealed that Sylvia had been shot with one .22 caliber bullet in the top of her head and stabbed 3 times in her upper back on both the left and right sides. She'd also been strangled and was most likely sexually assaulted before her death. The autopsy determined that Sylvia died of blood loss from the stab wounds, which penetrated her heart and both lungs. The bullet wound was a secondary cause of death. This senseless murder left the peaceful community paralyzed with fear, while the authorities were tasked with the challenge of finding the perpetrator who was capable of such a gruesome crime. However, the ordeal for the local police department was challenging from the beginning. Though initially investigators were optimistic about solving the case, it was getting more difficult each day. Despite having plenty of forensic evidence, due to a lack of technology, investigators were unable to identify a suspect. Even the unknown bodily fluid was of no use, as it was the early 80s and DNA was still in its infancy. There was no registered sex offender profile at that time either, so it was impossible to find a match. In 1983, just 2 years after Sylvia's murder, crime scene investigators tested the orange rug that was collected from the crime scene with an alternate light source. The test located the potential foreign material on the rug. Although the case lay dormant, throughout the years, many developments were made. One of the most notable of them brought a ray of hope to the investigators, as well as Sylvia's family, in the form of a chilling confession. The confession came from notorious serial killer and drifter Otis Elwood Toole when he confessed to killing Quayle. Toole described trees and hedges around the slain woman's house for detectives. However, there was a twist in the story. Toole was known for making false confessions, along with one of his companions, claiming hundreds of victims. Many of their confessions were later called into question due to significant inconsistencies. Authorities were only able to confirm a handful, and the rest were determined to be false. In 1983, based on Toole's claim, detectives didn't continue any further investigation, and the case was considered closed at the time. That was until DNA evidence ruled him out, indicating that Toole was not the source of DNA found at the crime scene. In 1993, Bob Gallagher, then the Arapahoe County District Attorney, dropped the charges against Toole in Sylvia's killing. The case remained cold while the investigation went back to square one. Toole died in 1996 while incarcerated in Florida. In 1995, a section of the carpet that was preserved for future testing was submitted to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for testing. The Bureau was able to develop an unknown male DNA profile from the evidence found in the rug in 2000. The profile was entered into the FBI Combined DNA Index System, commonly known as CODES, for a possible match, but to no avail. For many years, the law enforcement department followed every possible lead by implementing newer technologies, but every time they returned empty-handed. While Sylvia's heartbroken family waited for answers, the murder remained a mystery for many decades. Finally, a much-awaited breakthrough came in 2020. In that year, Cherry Hills Village Police Department collaborated with a Colorado-based private genetic database management company, United Data Connect, or UDC. UDC is a private genetic database management system co-founded by former Denver District Attorney Mitch Morrissey. That company follows genetic genealogy technique to locate criminals. Unlike traditional DNA sampling methods, UDC works with two databases, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, where they try to locate a close or even a distant match with the suspect's DNA with that of potential relatives. After an intense analysis and investigation, UDC was finally able to provide police with a possible suspect, David Dwayne Anderson, on May 26, 2020. The now 61-year-old Anderson had lived a quiet, uneventful life in Cozad, a small town in Nebraska with a sparse population. At the time of Sylvia's murder, he was only 22 years old and lived in Englewood, just a couple of miles from Cherry Hills Village, both before and after the crime. Anderson had a criminal history as well. Between 1981 and 1986, he was arrested on 8 separate occasions for committing commercial and residential burglaries. Documents showed that during one of those residential burglaries, Anderson entered the residence by removing and discarding the screen of a bedroom window, a similar situation as in the Sylvia Quayle case, apart from the fact that he wore gloves in the commission of these crimes to avoid fingerprints. On January 17, 2021, investigators traveled to Cozad in an attempt to collect Anderson's DNA, and the following day surveilled his home. They were able to collect 2 trash bags that were discarded in the apartment complex dumpster where Anderson resided. Inside those bags, investigators found bills indicating they belonged to him. Many items were collected from the bag and were sent to the DNA testing lab, including a vanilla Coke can. After exactly 1 week, on the 29th of January 2021, they received the much-awaited news that they'd been waiting for the last 40 years. The DNA found on that empty vanilla Coke can was an exact match to the DNA found at the crime scene. David Anderson was apprehended by law enforcement on February 10, 2021. On the basis of this evidence, he was charged with 2 counts of homicide and aggravated assault. Though he didn't reveal much, investigators believed Anderson committed that crime after thorough planning. Police believed he'd been scouting the area for possibly some time. He also cut off the telephone line to prevent her from calling for help. He didn't just kill her, it was an overkill, as if he was really enjoying that killing. His every action proved it was a senseless, premeditated crime committed by a very depraved mind. His pattern of behavior revealed he was a violent drifter. He would, no doubt, have been behind bars if there was a proper database. Anderson didn't reveal much about that night. In fact, he remained totally non-cooperative with the police. Therefore, the exact time of that murder was still a mystery to the police, as was the motive. However, she died sometime after her call with her sister and before her father discovered her, which was between 11 p.m. at night and 8 a.m. the following morning. After 40 years, police could not recover the firearm he used that night. However, his silence really didn't help him to escape after all. The monumental evidence collected by police was enough to sentence him. As it turned out, Anderson was also a prime suspect in another similar homicide case. It showed his propensity to commit motiveless violence against women. Anderson initially went to trial in March 2022, but jurors couldn't reach a verdict after 5 days, and the judge declared a mistrial. Then the 18th Judicial District Attorney's Office brought the first-degree murder charges again after a few months. This time, the jury found Anderson guilty of Sylvia Quayle's murder committed 4 decades earlier. In June 2022, David Anderson was sentenced to life imprisonment. He'll be eligible for parole only after 20 years. He was prosecuted in accordance with the law that was in place at the time of the murder. Present law doesn't allow parole for such violent criminals. The right to justice is one of the fundamental rights, and waiting 40 years for justice was too long. William Quayle, the father of Sylvia Quayle, died in 1999. He went to the grave never knowing who was responsible for his daughter's untimely demise. In 2009, Mary Quayle, the mother of Sylvia Quayle, also died. She too had waited hopelessly for justice up until the last moment of her life. Sylvia's younger sister Jo and brother-in-law still live in the area. Throughout that prolonged period, they stayed in touch with the local police department, but always deliberately stayed away from the media spotlight. Close sources revealed Sylvia's younger sister Jo still preserved all her deceased sister's pottery artwork at her place. Sylvia's gravestone is marked with a beautiful line, "Beauty seen is never lost," a cruel reminder of an eternal beauty that's now frozen in time, all because of one depraved man. Here's another incredible triumph for advanced DNA technology. Do you think David Anderson could have had other victims? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.